What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. So I've got a big smile on my face right now because Donald Trump made one of the biggest wins in American history, if you will. Of course, we've had nothing but unprecedented historical moment after unprecedented historical moment over the past, 2 years at this point, 3 years at this point, ever since all those indictments started coming down the pipeline for Donald Trump. And, I kind of knew this was going to happen. I slightly prognosticated this when I said this. Skandalakis appointed himself to handle that issue as well and ultimately chose not to pursue charges against Jones. Yes, because it's all bogus. So that's a good indicator right here that once he looks at all of this, he's going to see, okay, well, they never actually certified any of this. They didn't certify the electors. They didn't certify none of the paperwork. No, they were just doing their due diligence. And he's going to drop all this probably. So we're going to actually see an end probably to all of this. That is right, folks. Check this out. New prosecutor won't pursue charges against Trump and others in Georgia election interference case, folks. This is a great day for not only the judicial system in this country, but democracy in general, the American Republic, if you will, because it proves outright that you cannot just fabricate charges out of thin air. Once again, folks, this was one of the most aggravating, I don't know what you call it, like cases in American history to me, because once again, we all have the right to challenge an election. If you happen to run for a seat and you lose and you feel there was impropriety that took place during that election, you most certainly have the right to issue a challenge to that election and make sure we investigate it thoroughly and exonerate anybody of any wrongdoing if there was no wrongdoing, right? Or charge people where it's necessary, if you will. And that's all Donald Trump was doing. We look into these cases, right? Absolutely nothing wrong with none of this. There was nothing wrong with challenging an election. But what did the corporate press do? They weaponized that word, saying Donald Trump tried to overturn an election. Right? Of course, that's what a challenge to an election is when you figure out or you see there's evidence of maybe there's some fraud going on over here, or maybe there was some ballots counted that shouldn't have been counted. You want to challenge that. Well, you're an election denier if you do so. This is the type of language that Democrats and the corporate media use as leverage over you to try to make you feel bad about your positions, to make you feel bad about the truth, about advocating for the truth, about speaking your mind. That is the problem, folks. And you had people like Jenna Ellis absolutely capitulate to these people trying to commit evil upon this country. And that's what it is. That's one of the only ways it can be described as evil, because they are trying to weaponize the entirety of the election challenge process against Donald Trump and against you, because once again, that whole label, oh, you're an election denier, that is meant as a pejorative. That is meant as slanderous language to make you feel bad, to try to make you sit down and shut up. That's what they wanted you to do. But folks, that's not what we're going to do, is it? No, we're going to continue to push back in the face of this nonsense, to push back in the face of this evil that is overtaking this country, folks. It is absolutely overtaking this country, and the corporate press they are right there in the forefront. They are the ones pushing the narratives, folks, and we cover that every single day on this. But let's get into this, because this is great, y'all. Check this out, y'all. A judge on Wednesday dismissed the Georgia election interference case against President Donald Trump and others after the prosecutor who took over the case said he would not pursue the charges, ending the last effort to punish the president in the courts for his efforts to overturn his 2020 election loss. You see how they're trying to punish Donald Trump. Pete Skandalakis, the executive director of the Prosecuting Attorneys Council of Georgia, took over the case last month from Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis, who was removed over an appearance of impropriety created by a romantic relationship with the special prosecutor she chose to lead the case. After Skandalakis's filing, Fulton County Superior Court Judge Scott McAfee issued a one-paragraph order dismissing the case in its entirety. The latest criminal case against Trump to unravel. That's the sub-headline, to unravel. Once again, like you love how they frame all this. Oh, it's just unraveling. It should have never been there in the first place. That's the main focus that we should focus on here, is that it should have never been there in the first place. So what do you mean unraveling, right? Like, it was a very vindictive case. This was Joe Biden and a concerted effort by Democrats to try to keep Donald Trump off of the ballot, because they did not want him to win. They did not want him to be able to run for election, right? They didn't want that at all, because they knew he was going to win. They knew, and I wonder why they knew he was going to win. The abandonment of the Georgia case is the latest reflection of how Trump has emerged largely unscathed from a spat of prosecutions that once threatened to imperil his political career and personal liberty. That is right. They were trying to lock him up for the rest of his life over this, which, you know, to be fair, that's kind of a hyperbolic statement, if you will, because, you know, some of these charges was, 4 or 5 years maximum, maybe 10 years at the most. But when you factor in all of the different counts, I think Donald Trump was looking at like 400 years in prison, something like that. Like, are you kidding me with this? Because he challenged an election. There was nothing illegal about any of it. They tried to cry fake electors and all that other nonsense. But once again, I've already broke this down several times. You absolutely cannot challenge an election, have that election overturned, and then try to scramble to find electors. You have to have electors to be certified. So what do? While your challenges are waiting in the wings, or everything's being litigated or whatever, you've got to put together the slates of electors, so when this court case gets overturned, your electors can be certified, Congress approves it, and then boom, you just overturned an election. But according to Democrats, that's illegal and you can't do that, even though that is exactly how the Constitution dictates this takes place. They called it illegal. Whatever. Former Justice Department Special Counsel Jack Smith, who had charged Trump with conspiring to overturn the results of the 2020 election and hoarding classified documents at his Mar-a-Lago estate in Florida, dropped both cases after Trump won the White House last year. Smith cited long-standing Justice Department policy against the indictment of a sitting president. Yeah, but you know what? That's policy to not indict the president. It says nothing about dropping criminal cases against a person. What is that meant to tell you, folks? Once again, I've said this, I don't know how many times at this point. If these people truly believe that Donald Trump was guilty of seditious conspiracy or trying to overthrow the government, for crying out loud, do you think they would just give up? They would just drop these cases, regardless if he won the presidency or not. You know, if you truly believe that this guy tried to coup the government, literally tried to coup the government, if you thought that, would you just give up? No, you absolutely would not just give up. You would wait till this man comes out of office, and then you would nail him to the freaking wall. But they're not doing this. They chose the low road on this. They just gave up and walked away. I guess he didn't try to coup the government, I guess. It's insane, y'all. It really is. And though Trump was convicted of felony charges in New York in connection with hush money payments during the 2016 election, he was sentenced in January to an unconditional discharge, leaving his conviction intact but sparing him any punishment. Once again, and what does that have to do with this? Nothing, folks. What that paragraph right there is meant to do is smear Donald Trump. It's trying to make you think, well, he's a convicted felon. Of course he's guilty. That's what they're trying to do. And once again, this is narrative building. This is not journalism, folks. Absolutely not. It was unlikely that legal action against Trump could have moved forward while he is president. Right? Once again, like I was just explaining, you wait till he's done. Wait till he comes out of office. These people either don't think or they don't truly believe the nonsense that comes out of their freaking mouth. 14 other defendants still face charges, including former New York Mayor and Trump attorney Rudy Giuliani and former White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows. Steve Sadow, Trump's lead attorney in Georgia, applauded the case's dismissal. The political persecution of President Trump by disqualified DA Fani Willis is finally over. This case should have never been brought. A fair and impartial prosecutor has put an end to this lawfare. The Associated Press has reached out to a spokesperson for Willis seeking comment on the dismissal. The strongest and most prosecutable case against those seeking to overturn the 2020 presidential election results and prevent the certification of those votes was the one investigated and indicted by Special Counsel Jack Smith, Skandalakis wrote in his court filing Wednesday. He is correct about that. He added that the criminal conduct alleged in the Georgia indictment was conceived in Washington, D.C., not the state of Georgia. The federal government is the appropriate venue for this prosecution, not the state of Georgia. That is also correct. He is right about these things, right? But once again, the federal government doesn't have a case here. Absolutely doesn't have a case here, because you can't just go after a guy. You can't indict somebody for challenging an election, for seeing some fraud, right? Bringing that to court and getting yourself ready, doing your due diligence in the process, right? You can't put somebody in jail for that. That is our legal process, right? That is the process by which everybody is due in this country when you have a challenge like this, right? This is all just completely insane, and I find it very, very fascinating, if you ask me. And this is good on Donald Trump. I am glad for Donald Trump, because it is high time this lawfare come to an end, folks. And that's all it's been, is lawfare. All of this was in a bid to try to stop Donald Trump from running for 2024 president. That's all they wanted to do. And when all that failed, they just threw their freaking hands up, gave up, and walked away. They didn't believe any of this nonsense, folks. These people are absolute scumbags. They are some of the worst, folks. They are trying to pervert our criminal justice system in this country to suit their own means. It's a perversion of our criminal justice system. Shut up, Saint. You gotta hush. I'm trying to record, puppy. You're still a good boy. It absolutely is a perversion of not only our criminal justice system, but the Constitution and just the American way in general, folks. It absolutely is. But I think that's all I got on this one. I want y'all to let me know what y'all think about all this down in the comment section. Don't forget, smash that like button for me. Subscribe if you're new around here. Share this video anywhere and everywhere you can. Click the join button, sign up, and become a member. And please disregard all the horn honking going on. So, you know, if you want to. I mean, you can, you know, pay attention to that if you would like, but, you know, you don't have to. Click the join button, all that goodly godly stuff. You guys remember that, look, God has a plan for everybody. And, you know, Jesus died on the cross so that we could have eternal life in heaven, folks. Abso-freaking-lutely. To me, that's just one of the most amazing aspects about being a Christian. To think about that this man sacrificed his life for us, for everybody. And some people don't even realize that, folks. That's why we got to spread the word. But I am not a preacher, so I would just leave it at that, folks. You guys try to have a good day. Stay legitical. Peace.